What's up, everybody? For those of you that watched my last videos, saw me catch at least one trout on a pheasant tail emerger. Well, I ended up losing that pheasant tail emerger that day. I didn't have any more of them. So what I'm going to do now is tie up a couple of them, and I figured I'd make a little video and walk y'all through what my recipe is for a little pheasant tail emerger. Generally, when I tie, I usually tie at least half a dozen, at least 6, 7 or 8 if I'm feeling like it's a really hot fly or just in a good mood to tie. Anyway, I just thought I'd make the quick video about it, and in this one I am going to tie up 6, but I'm gonna do them in individual sizes because there seems to be, from what I noticed, there seem to be a lot of different size bugs out right now, and it looked like they went from like a size 18 all the way up to about a size 14. So how I broke it down is I'm just going to do 2 on an 18, 2 on a 16, 2 on a 14, and then after I tie like the basic generic pheasant tail, I'm then going to move into to another fly that's going to be just like the pheasant tail, I think, but I'm going to add a foam wing case on it to kind of maybe hold it just like a little bit higher in the water column than what an unweighted pheasant tail would. I noticed that other pheasant tail that I had, after a while, I guess it got saturated with water, it would start to sink below the surface, and I don't know, it's not that that's a bad thing, but when the way the trout are rising, you can see like their nose, like just come up and barely break. So whatever they're eating is real close to the surface, and I'm thinking that'll increase my chances if I do it this way, to add that little piece of foam and let it float a little higher. With that being said, let's jump right into this. Okay, so I'm gonna take my number 18 hook over Herl. I'm going to start small and go big. Put it in the vise. Wind the thread all the way back along the hook shank, and then I usually trim that I always trim that little excess tag. Snipped off. And I got me some pheasant tail fibers. I just take usually on the tail I try to use about 3. See, I got 3 there separated pretty good, and then I just pull them out to a right angle and nip them right off. Pulling them out to a right angle ensures that, see how all your tips are lined up the way they're supposed to be. Boom. And nymphs around here are kind of weird. A lot of them have tails that are just slightly longer than what you can use, like, trying to match them to the hook shank. If any of y'all out there already tie, usually they tell you a rule of thumb is the tail should be the length of the hook shank. Well, I mean, that's good and everything, but a lot of nymphs in the southeast have some fairly long tails. I've seen some fairly long tails on them. So let me just get that guy tied in. Wind it back. Oh, where's that guy set? And then you can kind of mat them down a little bit. Then the next thing would be to grab some copper wire. I may already have some out. Go ahead and get enough for a couple patterns here. Get that nipped and tied in. Then we're going to come back to the pheasant tail fibers. This time I'm probably going to grab, well, this is an 18. I'm probably going to grab about five fibers. Well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not so much worried about the tips on this one because I'm going to tie it in by the tips. And by tying it in by the tips, that allows, I don't know if you can tell it on this, but if you've ever spent time around pheasant tail fibers or any tail fibers in general, they start out thin at the tip, and then as they progress at the base, they get wider, they get thicker. So by tying them in by the tips, what that allows you to do when you wrap your body is kind of show a more defined taper, or it makes it easier to recreate that taper that you find on the actual bug. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to wind it up to where I'm going to start the thorax, and then I'll take my pheasant tail and start the wrap. I'm just laying one wrap right next to the other, just like that. Just a nice little bug. Okay, and then now the tie off, I usually take my thread to the inside, like toward the vice jaws first, and wrap it that way. Get one wrap around that, and see, it just locks those fibers right into place. You don't have to worry about them going anywhere. Then 1, 2 more wraps, hold them up. Now they're sticking right up on top where you can get to them easy. Then I'm just going to nip those guys right off. A lot of people don't nip those off, but I usually use my Wingcase on a pheasant tail to create the legs too. I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to do about 4. Well, let's see. No, I'm going to do 6. I'm going to do 6 fibers. So there's 3. I think I got 6 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Need one more. Make 6. And now I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the tails on these. I want these tips to be in line, so I'm going to pull them to a right angle and just stroke them till, well, you see they're even there, and then just nip them off. And then what I do is I just do my best estimate, usually about the length of the tail plus the length of the hook shank is long enough, which is what I got there. So I'm going to hold that and boom, tie those guys right in all the way to the hook eye and back, so they're just real good and seated. Okay, so that takes care of that part. And I'm going to nip that. I'm going to grab me, this is a small one, a size 18, so I'm only going to use one Peacock Herl, and I'm just going to nip that little end off there, the little, I call it the cuticle. It's where that fiber would have connected to the stem on the actual feather from the bird. And then I'm just going to, you can see it there, just grab it and tie that guy in. And then wind back. And now it's time to wrap the thorax with the Peacock Herl. So I'm going to do that. Just lay one wrap right in front of the other. Build a nice little thorax. Okay, just like that. And just like I did the last time, I'm going to use that same technique to lock the fiber. Okay, got about 3 wraps on that, and then I'm just going to nip it. And then now what I can do, I'll show you one technique I use here. I just go ahead and just one wrap around the wing case. And now when I wrap the rib, I'm going to wrap it in the opposite direction that I wrapped the abdomen and thorax. And the reason for this is by doing an alternate wrap like that, you increase the strength of the fly. the fibers, it's harder for the trout. Uh-oh, okay, my thread came off. No big deal. No big deal. So I'm just going to hold those fibers down with my thumb and forefinger and still wrap my rib. And I just try to leave some pretty good spaces on the rib, you know, and make them equal. And generally, it's probably about 3 on a fly like this. It's generally about like 3 or 4 wraps on the abdomen, and then you come in and you get about 2 or 3 on the thorax. And you just kind of hold that spacing, try to make the spacing even just all the way through it. Sometimes easier said than done. But alright, so we got that. We tie off the rib just the same way that we tied off everything else. Okay, and then this wire's thin enough, I'm not really worried about it dulling my scissors. I just nip that copper wire out, and I've got enough left over to where I can tie another fly with it, so I just kind of kick it off to the side. I grab my Wingcase with my thumb and forefinger of my right hand, depending on which way you tie, it'll be your right or left hand, and I use my other hand to hold those fibers down just like that, and then we get a wrap around them if it'll let us. There we go, just like that. And then I grab them, once I got a wrap of thread around them, I grab them and kind of pull to hold them straight as I take these next wraps. So oh boy, let's try that again. So I hold them and I tie them off right like that, and I hold them forward so it doesn't get my Wingcase all crooked. My Wingcase is nice and straight over the back of the fly. Okay, now I've gotten that far, and here's the point where I told you about the 6 fibers. This is the reason why I tied in 6 fibers. Generally on a mayfly nymph, they're an insect, they have 6 legs. So I have 6 fibers up here that I can use to create the legs of my fly. And all I'm going to do is just split them. I'm going to split 3 this way. There's 1, 2, 3. Get that guy straight. And then I'm going to split 3 this way. Now some people might say it's a little overkill, but you know, I mean, insects have 6 legs. I can make them have 6 legs. I'm going to make it have 6 legs. So then I just tie that little guy off. Right like that. See, I got my 6 legs on there. And then now I'm just going to drop some half hitches to knot it off. There's 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that's 1 completed fly. Only 11 more to go. Okay, now that I've got this, I've got these 6 legs, I'm going to trim them. And generally when I trim them to where they're probably about right even with the hook shank. Right there, stop right where the tail begins. Just nip them off. Invert it, do the same thing to this side. Just nip them off. Now they're all nice and even. And that's 1 fly. Okay, so I've got my pheasant tail emergers tied, and I finished them up. And now I'm going to tie that one that I was talking to you earlier about, where I'm going to add, put in a foam wing case. So I think I'm just going to keep everything pretty much the same. I'm just going to change and put in a foam wing case. So, alright. I already have the thread started on the hook, as you can see. So I'm just going to start right where I did last time and tie in some tail fibers. Tie in my pheasant tail fibers. So I'm going to pull a couple of them out. Nip them right off. Tie them in by their tips. And the reason why I chose to do that is, I don't know, it just seems like a better sequence of events. So like now I've wrapped, so I wrapped all the way frontwards to tie my tail fibers in, right? So instead of having to like wrap all the way back and then wrap forward, and then wrap all the way back and wrap forward again, right? That'd be like tying in the tips, wrapping them forward, and then wrapping back again, tying in the monofilament and wrapping back, right? You've done, what is it, like a sequence of 4 wraps there doing it that way. But see, now if I do it the other way, we're using 3, so I'm saving the amount of thread that I'm actually putting on the hook too, which will also cut down on weight. So that was tie the pheasant tail fibers in, wrapping the thread up, tie the abdomen material, the other pheasant tails, from the hook eye back, and then now I'm going to tie in the monofilament going back frontwards, and then see how I'm already set up to wrap the thorax without taking any more thread wraps. I'm going to back that back to about right there. Okay, and I'm just going to cut that monofilament out, and then now I wrap my abdomen. There's my abdomen. And then instead of tying in pheasant tail fibers for the wing case, I'm going to use some brown foam. And this foam that I'm using, it's just brown foam. Brown craft foam. You can pick it up at Walmart. Used to be only like 50 cents or less a sheet. It's cheap stuff, but man, you can do a lot of things with this. It makes terrestrial bodies. You can do parachute wing posts with it. You can do all kinds of stuff with foam that I never thought. And one of the things I'm going to use for it today is to make a wing case on an emerger. Just make like a little, I'm not even talking 1/4 of an inch here, probably closer to an 1/8, maybe 3/16, somewhere around in there, somewhere between an 1/8 and a 3/16. And I'm just going to cut enough to make a wing case. And that looks like probably about like enough right there. So then I'll just cut it out. And now to aid me in tying it in, I'm going to put a taper on it. So you see how I'm holding, I hope you can see how I'm holding it there to do this. And I'm just going to make a little taper on it. Taper that mess right on in. Alright, so you can see the taper on that piece of foam now, and that just makes it a lot easier to tie in, because now when I go to tie it in, I just have a nice taper to deal with. I don't have to deal with the full thickness of the foam. And I think this may be some useful information. I think this foam that I'm using is a 2mm thick foam. So if you wanted to go get some on your own, you just go to the craft section at Walmart or Hobby Lobby, wherever you prefer, and just get some of this stuff. Alright, so, and it's just hanging out right on top of the hook there. And I'm going to do like I did last time. I'm going to take some Peacock Herl and make a thorax. hides that foam well, don't it? Probably better than I thought. This is the first one of these patterns I've tied. So, I mean, it's not like I did anything major to change it. All I did was just put in a piece of foam, you know. But still, just amazed at how good that Peacock looks over the top of the foam. It hit it really well. There we go. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing that I did last time. Just do one thread wrap over the foam to hold the wing case in. And then do my wrap. And I wrap the fishing line, or the tippet material, I wrap it the same way I did the copper wire. I wrap it the opposite direction that I wrapped the abdomen and thorax in. And I do the same thing, trying to do the same amount of spaces. And you're not going to get like as much flash out of the fishing line as you are the copper wire. I think that's probably obvious, but you'll still get the same effect of it creating a segmented body, which is one of the things that really stand out about these insects. You can see, like, we'll have to do a video on some net seining where we just get a bunch of bugs and look at them and see what's in the stream. But yeah, the segmentation is definitely one of them that stands out real good to the naked eye, and I'm sure the trout key on that too. Of course, I don't know. You would like to think a lot of things that the trout key on, but I don't know. Okay, so there's that tied in. Cut that out. And tie in the foam thorax. 2, 3, 4. And there it is, just sitting up there nice and cute. And I think I'm gonna take a slightly different tactic here. I'm not gonna trim that off flush. I think what I'm actually gonna do is get back on the hook eye down here and knot off, tie it off with a few half hitches. I usually do at least 4 half hitches. At least 4. And then throw in a couple extra for good measure. I'm going to go ahead and snip that thread and get it out of the way. And like I said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to trim that thread, or not trim that thread, trim that foam, leave probably about like that much, not as long as the wing case per se, but maybe just a tad shorter, but not by much. And I think what I'm gonna create the effect of there is maybe the bug coming out of the shuck, like it's actually emerging. That's where my thoughts are now. If any of y'all out there watching this have more experience on it, you can leave me some comments whether you think I'm doing a good idea there, or if I've got it completely wrong. I don't know. That's an emerging insect is one that I haven't trapped yet. I haven't actually got to see one busting out of its nymphal case yet. But I have seen the shucks or whatever. So I'm just thinking, you know, I do know the theory behind the mayfly floating in the current, and they rise to the surface to emerge. So that's just kind of hopefully putting that theory to the test. But if anyone watching has any more input, I would definitely appreciate that. Maybe it'll make me, I don't know if it'll make me a better fisherman, but at least I can tie a more realistic fly. I appreciate y'all watching if you hung with me this far, and you know, like or comment below. If you want to subscribe and you like what I'm doing, that's cool too. This is something that I enjoy, and I enjoy sharing it. So y'all have a good day. We'll talk to you later.